The whole classroom went quiet when Mr. Thomas Caldwell held up Nia Bennett's essay like it was evidence in a trial. He did not ask a question. He did not give her a chance to explain. He smiled, the way cruel people smile when they think the room belongs to them. Then he said, "Your father is a Supreme Court justice." "Really, Nia? Do you expect anyone here to believe that?" The children froze. Parents in the back stopped whispering. Nia stood beside her desk, 10 years old, wearing a navy cardigan, worn white sneakers, and the kind of silence children use when they are trying not to cry. Then Mr. Caldwell tore her paper in half. What he did not know was that before the morning ended, Justice Marcus Bennett would walk through that classroom door, and every lie Mr. Caldwell believed about power, class, race, and truth would collapse in front of him. Nia Bennett had learned early that important people did not always look important. Her father, Marcus Bennett, did not move through the world like the men on television who needed everyone to recognize them. He did not raise his voice at restaurants. He did not correct strangers who treated him like he did not belong. He did not wear his title around the house like a crown. At home, in their quiet townhouse in Washington, D.C., he was just daddy. He made pancakes badly. He burned toast almost every Saturday. He hummed old gospel songs when he tied his shoes. He sat on the floor in his socks and helped Nia build school projects with cardboard, glue, and more patience than skill. He read thick legal briefs at the kitchen table, but he also braided Nia's hair when her mother had an early hospital shift. Her mother, Dr. Grace Bennett, was a trauma surgeon at MedStar Washington Hospital Center. She moved through life with the calm of someone who had seen blood, fear, and miracles in the same hour. She knew how to speak gently and still make people listen. But Marcus was quieter. He was a justice of the United States Supreme Court, one of the most powerful legal minds in the country. But inside their home, he was the man who asked Nia if she had eaten enough vegetables and whether she had remembered to charge her tablet. That morning, Nia sat at the kitchen counter with her school folder open in front of her. On the first page was her assignment for Family Career Day. Write about what your parent does. Explain why the job matters. Share one thing you admire about them. Nia had written the words in careful handwriting. My father is Justice Marcus Bennett. He serves on the United States Supreme Court. He helps decide important cases about the Constitution, civil rights, fairness, and justice. He says the law should never forget the people it affects. She had read that paragraph to herself 5 times before breakfast. Every time her heart lifted, not because she wanted to brag, not because she wanted anyone to clap, but because she loved her father and because for most of her life she had been told to keep pieces of him private, security reasons. That was the phrase Marcus used whenever she asked why he could not come to school in his robe, why their address was never written fully on forms, why men in dark suits sometimes stood near the entrance of buildings when her father spoke at public events. Our family has to be careful, sweetheart, he would say. But careful felt lonely sometimes. Careful meant the other kids could say their dads were lawyers, firefighters, restaurant owners, city workers, and police officers. But Nia was supposed to say her father worked in government. Government. Such a small word for a man who spent nights thinking about decisions that could shape the lives of millions. Nia poked at her scrambled eggs. Marcus noticed. He always noticed. You are quiet today, little judge, he said. Nia looked up. Do not call me that if you will not let me tell people what you really do. Grace paused near the coffee machine. Marcus leaned back in his chair. He was dressed simply that morning in a gray sweater, dark jeans, and brown shoes. No robe, no pin, no badge. Nothing that said Supreme Court. Nothing that said history. Nothing that said he had once stood before the Senate while half the country argued about whether a black man from Atlanta had the courage, discipline, and brilliance to sit on the highest court in the nation. He looked like any other father trying to finish coffee before traffic on Constitution Avenue swallowed the city. Nia, he said gently, you can tell the truth. You do not ever have to lie about who your family is. Then why does the school form say government employee? Because sometimes forms are seen by people who do not need details. But Mr. Caldwell said we have to be specific. He said vague answers show a lack of pride. Grace's eyes narrowed. He said that. Nia nodded. He said Family Career Day is about presenting respectable careers. Marcus heard the word respectable. It landed softly but not lightly. He had spent his life hearing words like that. Respectable, qualified, appropriate, safe. Words that sounded clean until you saw how often they were used to measure black excellence with a crooked ruler. He folded his hands. Write the truth, Nia, she blinked. Really? Really, what if he does not believe me? Marcus looked at his daughter for a long moment. Then he said, the truth does not stop being true because someone refuses to believe it. Grace walked over and kissed the top of Nia's head. And if anyone has a problem, she said, they can speak to your father. Nia smiled for the first time that morning, but Marcus did not smile. Sold him, yet deep inside him, in the place where fathers keep their fears, he already knew that truth was not always enough to protect a child from cruelty. Lincoln Academy sat in the heart of Washington, D.C., only a few miles from the White House, not far from the Capitol, surrounded by streets where power moved in black cars and working people waited for buses in the rain. It was a private public partnership school with a grand name, tall windows, polished floors, and brochures that used words like diversity, excellence, leadership, and opportunity. Children came from every corner of the city. Some lived in Georgetown row houses. Some lived in apartments east of the river. Some had parents who worked in law firms, hospitals, restaurants, embassies, construction sites, hotels, agencies, and night shifts. Some children arrived in cars with tinted windows. Others walked from metro stations with backpacks heavier than their shoulders looked strong enough to carry. Naya liked school most days. She liked reading. She loved debate club. She liked math when it behaved. She liked the library because it smelled like old paper and quiet rain. But she did not like Mr. Thomas Caldwell. Nobody said that out loud. Adults called him strict. The principal called him traditional. Parents called him demanding. Students knew better. Mr. Caldwell did not shout all the time. That would have made him easier to explain. He used a colder kind of cruelty, the kind that came wrapped in rules, posture, and polished shoes. He corrected poor children more sharply for wrinkled uniforms. He praised wealthy children for confidence and called the same confidence disrespect when it came from black students. He told one boy from Southeast Washington to stop acting tough when the boy was only asking for a pencil. He told a Latina girl named Sofia Ramirez that her mother's housekeeping job was honorable, then immediately asked a white student to tell the class about his father's law firm with a smile so bright it changed the temperature in the room. And when Naya spoke with confidence, he often said, "That tone is unnecessary, young lady." But when Emma Whitaker, whose father owned a consulting company, spoke the same way, he said, "Excellent leadership voice." Naya saw it. Children always see it. They may not have all the adult words for it yet, but they feel the weight difference in the room. That Friday morning, Family Career Day turned the classroom restless. Parents were scheduled to arrive after lunch. Before that, students would read their essays aloud. Mr. Caldwell stood at the front of room 214 wearing a navy blazer, a red tie, and the proud expression of a man who believed he had built civilization himself. Behind him, the wall displayed student essays under the title Future Leaders. Nia sat in the second row beside her best friend Maya Brooks, whose mother drove buses for the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority. Maya leaned toward her and whispered, "Are you really reading yours?" Nia nodded. "About your dad?" "Yes." Maya's eyes widened, "All of it." Nia swallowed. "He said I could." Maya smiled. "Good. People need to know." Across the room, Emma Whitaker was already telling anyone who would listen that her father had met 3 senators at a dinner in New York City. Mr. Caldwell clapped his hands. "Class, sit tall. Today is not just a celebration of careers. It is a celebration of credibility. When we speak about our families, we must be honest, precise, and humble." His eyes passed over the room, then landed on Nia for half a second too long. Nia felt it. She looked down at her paper. Mr. Caldwell continued, "Some of your parents hold impressive positions. Some perform ordinary but necessary work. Both are valuable. However, what is not valuable is exaggeration. We do not inflate our family stories to compete with others." Maya looked at Nia. Nia kept her eyes on her desk. Students began reading. Emma went first. "My father is a senior partner at Whitaker and Sloan Consulting. He advises political leaders, business owners, and nonprofit organizations on strategy. Last month he traveled to Chicago and New York for meetings about urban development." "Wonderful, Emma." "Clear polished. But believable. Believable." Naya heard the word and felt her stomach tighten. Then came Henry Collins, whose mother was an architect. Mr. Caldwell praised his vocabulary. Then Lily Parker, whose father owned a restaurant in Philadelphia. Mr. Caldwell nodded politely. Then Maya Brooks stood and read about her mother, Denise Brooks, who drove a city bus. "My mother wakes up before sunrise. She drives people to work, to school, to hospitals, and to places they need to be. She knows the city better than almost anyone. She says a bus driver carries more than passengers. She carries people's mornings." Nia smiled. It was beautiful. But Mr. Caldwell only said, "Thank you, Maya." Very practical. Practical, not wonderful, not polished, not leadership. Practical. Maya sat down with her jaw tight. Then Mr. Caldwell looked at his clipboard. Nia Bennett. The room shifted. Nia stood. Her paper trembled slightly, but her voice came out clear. "My father is Justice Marcus Bennett. He serves on the United States Supreme Court. He helps decide important cases about the Constitution, civil rights, freedom, fairness, and justice." She had only read 2 sentences when Mr. Caldwell raised his hand. "Stop!" The word cracked through the room. Nia looked up. Mr. Caldwell's face had changed. Not surprised, not curious, offended, as if her words had insulted him personally. He walked slowly toward her desk. "Repeat what you just said." "My father is Justice Marcus Bennett. He serves on the United States Supreme Court." A few children turned to stare at her. Emma's mouth fell open. Maya sat very still. Mr. Caldwell held out his hand. "Paper?" Nia hesitated now. She handed it to him. He read the first paragraph silently. Then his mouth curled. "Class," he said, holding the paper up. "This is exactly what I warned you about." Nia's chest tightened. "Mr. Caldwell," she said. "It is true." He ignored her. "It is one thing to admire your parent. It is another thing to invent a fantasy because you feel overshadowed by classmates whose families have accomplished more visible things." Maya whispered, "That is not right." Mr. Caldwell's eyes snapped toward her. "Maya Brooks," not another word. Maya went silent. He turned back to Nia. "Your father is not a Supreme Court justice." Nia's face grew hot. "Yes, he is." Mr. Caldwell laughed once, a short dry sound. "Nia, I have taught in this city for nearly 20 years. I know what the children of Supreme Court justices look like. I know what schools they attend. I know how those families move. They do not walk into my classroom wearing worn sneakers and carrying a backpack with a broken zipper." The room went still. Nia looked down at her shoes. Her father had offered to buy new ones the week before, but she liked these. They were comfortable. One lace was frayed. One side had a small gray scuff from recess. Now they felt like evidence against her. Mr. Caldwell continued, louder now. "They do not live quietly. They do not hide behind vague school forms. They do not list government employee as a profession. They do not send their children into school without any mention of security, social standing, or proper documentation." Nia whispered, "We do have security sometimes. My dad keeps things private." "Private?" Caldwell repeated the word like it tasted foolish. Of course, a few children giggled nervously. Emma looked uncomfortable but said nothing. Mr. Caldwell held up the essay again. "This is not pride. This is dishonesty." Then he tore the paper in half. The sound seemed too loud for such a small room. Nia flinched. Maya gasped. He tore it again. Again, white pieces drifted down onto Nia's desk and the floor. Mr. Caldwell dropped the scraps in the trash can beside his desk. "You will rewrite this assignment during lunch," he said. "You will write the truth. If your father works for the government, say that. There is no shame in ordinary work." Nia's eyes filled, but she did not cry. "My father is not ordinary." Mr. Caldwell stepped closer. "Careful, young lady." Nia lifted her chin, trembling. "My father is Justice Marcus Bennett." His face hardened. "Then you will apologize to this class for lying." The classroom seemed to disappear around her. Nia could hear her own heartbeat. She thought of her father at the kitchen table that morning. The truth does not stop being true because someone refuses to believe it. Her voice shook, but she spoke. "I will not apologize for telling the truth." The silence that followed was heavier than any shout. Mr. Caldwell's eyes narrowed. "Office now." Nia did not move. Now Miss Bennett stood halfway. "Mr. Caldwell, her dad really is." "Sit down, Maya, but she is not lying." "I said sit down." Maya sat, tears shining in her eyes. Nia picked up her backpack. As she walked toward the door, Mr. Caldwell delivered the final blow. "Class, remember this. Character's not built by pretending to be important. Some people need to learn that respect is earned, not imagined." Nia stopped at the door. Her small hand tightened on the strap of her backpack. Then she walked out. In the hallway, the noise of the classroom faded behind her, but the shame followed. It followed her past the framed school awards. It followed her past the posters about kindness. It followed her past the glass display case filled with smiling children holding certificates. Respect, integrity, community. The words were everywhere, but Nia felt none of them. She reached the front office, where Ms. Allison Green, the receptionist, looked up. "Nia, sweetheart, what happened?" Nia opened her mouth, but no words came out. Before she could answer, Vice Principal Daniel Mercer stepped out of his office. He was a tall white man with sandy hair, a tired expression, and the kind of voice that always sounded like he was already disappointed. "Nia Bennett," he said. Mr. Caldwell called ahead. Of course he had. "Come in." Nia sat in a chair across from his desk. Her feet barely touched the floor. Mr. Mercer opened a folder on his computer. "So you disrupted class after refusing to correct false information." "It is not false, Nia. My father is Justice Marcus Bennett, Mr. Mercer looked at her for a long moment, then sighed. "Nia, I understand children sometimes feel pressure on family career day, especially in a school like this where some students have parents in very high places. My father is in a high place. That is exactly the kind of statement we need to be careful with." Nia's throat tightened. He clicked through her file. "Your enrollment records list your father as Marcus Bennett. Occupation, government employee. For security reasons." Mr. Mercer leaned back. "Security reasons?" "Yes, and your mother, Dr. Grace Bennett. She is a trauma surgeon." He paused. "A Supreme Court justice and a trauma surgeon." Nia nodded. He gave a small laugh, not loud enough to be called cruel, but just loud enough to hurt. "That is quite a family. It is my family. Nia, I am going to be honest with you. Stories like this can create problems. If we allow students to make grand claims without correction, it damages trust in the classroom. Why do you believe Mr. Caldwell but not me?" The question seemed to strike him. He blinked, then frowned. "This is not about belief, it is about evidence." "Then call my dad." Mr. Mercer stiffened. "We do not call parents every time a student refuses accountability." Nia reached into her backpack for her phone. Mr. Mercer held out his hand. "No phones during disciplinary meetings, please. He texted me. He said he is coming today." "Your father is coming to Family Career Day?" "Yes, as a Supreme Court justice."
"Yes."
Mr. Mercer rubbed his forehead. Nia, listen carefully. You are already in trouble for defiance. If you continue pushing this, Mr. Caldwell may recommend suspension for dishonesty and disrespect. Suspension. The word hit like cold water. Nia imagined her mother's face. She imagined her father standing in chambers, hearing that his daughter had been suspended for telling the truth about him. She gripped the edge of the chair. I did not lie. Mr. Mercer's voice grew sharper. Enough. Nia went still. You will return to class. You will apologize. You will rewrite the essay. And this ends today. A tear slipped down her cheek, he noticed, but his face did not soften. Do you understand? Nia whispered. My father says the law is supposed to protect the truth. Mr. Mercer looked away. This is not a courtroom. No, Nia thought. It was worse. Because in a courtroom, at least someone had to listen before making a judgment. Back in room 214, the classroom had changed. Several parents had arrived early and were sitting along the back wall. Family Career Day was beginning ahead of schedule because Mr. Caldwell liked order, and order meant doing things his way. Nia entered quietly, every head turned. Mr. Caldwell stood near the whiteboard, smiling at a man in a gray suit who had just introduced himself as Emma Whitaker's father. Ah, Nia, Mr. Caldwell said. His voice was pleasant now because parents were watching. Nia walked toward her seat. Not yet, she stopped. Mr. Caldwell folded his hands. Before we continue, I believe you owe a brief apology. Heat rushed to her face. Mr. Whitaker glanced at his phone. Mrs. Collins, the architect mother, looked uneasy. Maya stared at Nia with wide, helpless eyes. Nia whispered, I did not do anything wrong. Mr. Caldwell's smile tightened. Speak up. Nia raised her voice just enough. I did not do anything wrong. A few parents shifted. Mr. Caldwell breathed in slowly, performing patience for the adults. Nia, nobody is trying to shame you. We are trying to teach you that honesty matters. Your father may very well have a respectable job in government. That is enough. You do not need to turn him into a Supreme Court justice to feel valuable. My father is Justice Marcus Bennett. Mr. Caldwell's face darkened. There it is again. Emma's father looked up sharply at the name, but before he could speak, Mr. Caldwell continued. You see, class, this is what happens when pride replaces humility. Mr. Whitaker cleared his throat. Thomas, perhaps we should verify before. Mr. Caldwell raised one hand. I appreciate your concern, Mr. Whitaker, but I have the situation under control. Maya stood. No, you do not. The room gasped. Mr. Caldwell turned slowly. Excuse me. Maya's voice shook, but she kept going. You are embarrassing her because you think she cannot be telling the truth. But you did not check, you just decided. Mr. Caldwell pointed toward the door. Office. Maya's mother, Denise Brooks, who had just entered wearing her transit uniform, froze near the back of the room. What is happening here? Mr. Caldwell looked irritated. Mrs. Brooks, your daughter is interrupting a disciplinary matter. Denise stepped forward. My daughter is standing up for a friend. Mr. Caldwell's face flushed. This is a classroom, not a city bus. The insult landed hard. The room went silent. Denise Brooks lifted her chin. No, sir. On my bus, people know how to treat children with more respect than this. A murmur moved through the parents. Caldwell realized he had lost control of the temperature in the room. He turned back to Nia. Apologize. Now, Nia felt something inside her break, but not in the way he expected. It was not her courage breaking. It was her fear. She stood taller. My name is Nia Bennett. My father is Justice Marcus Bennett of the United States Supreme Court. You tore up my essay. You called me a liar. You made fun of where I live, what I wear, and what you think a justice's child should look like. Her voice trembled harder now. When my father gets here, you are going to owe me an apology. For a moment, nobody moved. Then Mr. Caldwell laughed. Not a big laugh. A small one. Almost pitying. Your father is not coming. The words cut through the room. Nia's eyes shone. Yes, he is. Mr. Caldwell leaned closer. No, Nia, he is not. And the sooner you accept that, the sooner this little performance can end. The classroom door opened. Principal Laura Mitchell stood there, pale and breathless. Mr. Caldwell, she said, hallway. Immediately, he blinked. Principal Mitchell, I am in the middle of now, Thomas. The use of his first name changed everything. The parents noticed. The students noticed. Nia noticed. Mr. Caldwell followed her into the hallway. Through the narrow window in the classroom door, Nia could see Principal Mitchell speaking quickly. Mr. Caldwell's expression moved from annoyance to confusion, then to disbelief. Then his face changed. Not fear exactly. Something close. Outside, beyond the hallway windows, 3 black vehicles pulled up along the curb in front of the school. They were not loud. They did not screech. They moved with a quiet authority that made people look without knowing why. 2 security officers stepped out first. Then another. They scanned the entrance, spoke into radios, and opened the rear door of the middle vehicle. A tall black man stepped out. He wore a dark suit, a white shirt, and a deep blue tie. He did not wear a robe. He did not need to. His face had been on newspapers, court websites, confirmation hearings, legal documentaries, and history books already being written for children not much older than Nia. Justice Marcus Bennett walked toward the school with calm steps. Not rushing, not posing, not angry in the way people expected anger to look. But every person who saw him understood that something serious had arrived. Inside the classroom, Emma's father stood up. "Oh my God," he whispered. Mrs. Collins moved to the window. Denise Brooks put a hand over her mouth. Maya turned to Nia. "Nia," she whispered, "your dad is here." Nia could not move. For the first time all morning, her body believed she was safe. In the hallway, Principal Mitchell stood beside Mr. Caldwell with a look he had never seen from her before. It was not professional concern. It was fury held together by discipline. "Thomas," she said quietly, "I just received a call from the Supreme Court Marshal's office." Mr. Caldwell swallowed. "There must be some." "No," she cut him off. "There is no misunderstanding. Justice Marcus Bennett is here for Family Career Day. He is Nia Bennett's father, the child you accused of lying, the child whose essay you tore up, the child you humiliated in front of students and parents." Mr. Caldwell opened his mouth. Nothing came out. Principal Mitchell continued. "You made assumptions about her because she is black, because her family keeps a low profile, because her shoes were not expensive enough for your imagination, and because you believed power has to look like the people you already respect." His face drained of color. "I did not mean. That sentence will not help you today." Down the hall, the front doors opened. Justice Marcus Bennett entered the building. For years, Marcus had walked into courtrooms where the air itself seemed to hold history. He had walked into Senate chambers, federal courthouses, churches after funerals, law schools full of young people hoping the world could still be repaired. But nothing had ever felt like this hallway. Because at the end of it was his daughter, and someone had made her feel small. Principal Mitchell stepped forward. "Justice Bennett, I am Laura Mitchell, principal of Lincoln Academy. I am deeply sorry." Marcus shook her hand. "Principal Mitchell." His voice was calm, too calm. "I understand there was an incident involving my daughter." Mr. Caldwell stood a few feet behind her, his shoulders stiff. Marcus looked at him. "And you are?" "Thomas Caldwell," he whispered, "Nia's teacher." Marcus held his gaze. "Mr. Caldwell." "Sir, Marcus raised one hand. "Before you explain, I want to ask one question. Did my daughter tell you who I was?" Mr. Caldwell's lips parted. "Yes." "Did you verify it?" "No." "Did you ask her mother?"
No.
"Did you call the office?" "No." "Did you contact me?"
No.
Marcus nodded slowly. "So you did not investigate the truth. You punished it." Mr. Caldwell flinched.
Justice Bennett, I believe she was exaggerating. I thought.
"Yes," Marcus said. "You thought, and that is where harm often begins. Not with evidence. With thought shaped by bias. With certainty built on appearances." The hallway was silent now. Office staff pretended not to listen and failed. Marcus continued. "My daughter is a child. She trusted the adults in this building to hear her. Instead, you taught her that some people will look at her face, her clothes, her neighborhood, and decide her truth is too large to belong to her." Mr. Caldwell's eyes lowered. Marcus's voice remained steady. "I have sat through arguments about constitutional rights, due process, equal protection, and the limits of power. But this morning, my daughter needed something simpler than law. She needed an adult to say, 'Let me check before I judge you.'" Principal Mitchell looked away, ashamed. Marcus turned back to her. "Where is Nia?" "Room 214. He nodded. "Then I would like to see my daughter." When Justice Marcus Bennett entered the classroom, silence did not fall, it slammed. Parents stood almost without thinking. Children stared. Emma's father straightened his jacket. Denise Brooks wiped her eyes before she even knew she was crying. Nia stood by her desk, frozen. Marcus saw her face. That was all it took. The careful public mask cracked, not fully, just enough for everyone to see the father beneath the justice. "Nia," he said. Her lips trembled. "Daddy." He crossed the room. For all the power attached to his name, he did not look powerful in that moment. He looked like a father trying not to break in front of his child. He knelt beside her desk. "Are you all right?" She shook her head. No, that one word pierced him. Marcus opened his arms. Nia stepped into them and sobbed. He held her close, one hand on the back of her head, the other wrapped around her shoulders. Her small body shook against his suit jacket. Every tear she had refused to give Mr. Caldwell came out, now because safety had finally arrived. The room watched, not as spectators, as witnesses. Maya cried silently. Her mother placed a hand on her shoulder. Mr. Caldwell stood near the doorway, pale and motionless. For the first time all morning, he saw Nia not as a lesson to control, not as a challenge to his authority, not as a story too big for a black girl in worn sneakers. He saw a child, a wounded child, and he saw himself standing at the center of the wound. Marcus stood slowly, keeping Nia's hand in his. He faced the class. "Good morning," he said. His voice filled the room without needing volume. "My name is Marcus Bennett. I serve as an Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. More importantly today, I am Nia's father." No one breathed loudly. "I came here because my daughter asked me to speak about my work. She was proud. She wrote about my job because her teacher assigned her to tell the truth about her family." He paused. "Then someone punished her for doing exactly that." Mr. Caldwell closed his eyes. Marcus looked at the students. "I want every child in this room to hear me carefully. Your truth does not become false because someone powerful refuses to believe it. Your family does not become less valuable because it does not look like someone else's idea of success. Your story matters before anyone important confirms it." Nia squeezed his hand. Marcus continued. My daughter wrote that I serve on the Supreme Court. That is true. She wrote that I work on cases involving the Constitution, fairness, civil rights, and justice. That is true. She wrote that I believe the law should never forget the people it affects. That is also true. His eyes moved toward Mr. Caldwell. But there is another truth this morning. A painful one. Bias does not always enter a room shouting. Sometimes it enters wearing a tie, holding a gradebook, calling itself standards. Several parents shifted. Mr. Caldwell's face tightened as if the words had physically touched him. Marcus did not look away. A teacher has power. The power to encourage, the power to correct, the power to shape how a child sees herself. And if that power is guided by assumptions instead of humility, it can do damage that lasts longer than a school day. Principal Mitchell stood near the door, her eyes wet. Marcus turned back to the children. Leadership is not about title. I have met judges who lacked wisdom and janitors who carried more dignity than senators. I have met wealthy men with poor character and working mothers whose courage could hold a city together. Never measure someone's worth by their shoes, their address, their accent, lunch, or the job title you think belongs to their family. He looked at Maya and Denise Brooks. A city bus driver carries lives every morning. A nurse holds the line between fear and healing. A cook feeds people who may never know his name. A cleaner makes important rooms usable before powerful people arrive. A parent working 2 jobs may be showing more sacrifice than anyone sitting behind a polished desk. Denise lowered her head, crying openly now. Marcus looked back at Naya, and a child should never have to prove she is worthy of being believed. The room was completely still. Then Mr. Caldwell stepped forward, his mouth opened. For once he did not know what to say. Principal Mitchell turned toward him. Mr. Caldwell. He looked at Naya. His eyes were red. Naya, he said, voice unsteady, I was wrong. The words came out small. He swallowed and tried again. I was wrong. Completely wrong. Nia stood beside her father, hand still in his. Mr. Caldwell looked at the torn scraps in the trash can. I did not listen to you. I did not check. I judged you by what I thought a justice's daughter should look like. I judged your shoes. I judged the form in your file. I judged your confidence as dishonesty. I used my authority to embarrass you instead of protect you. His voice broke. I tore up your work. I called you a liar in front of your classmates. I hurt you, and I am sorry. Nia watched him carefully. Children know fake apologies. This one did not feel polished. It felt painful. Mr. Caldwell turned toward Maya and Denise. Mrs. Brooks, Maya, I insulted you too. What I said about the bus was disrespectful and ugly. I am ashamed of it. You did not deserve that. Denise crossed her arms. No, we did not. Mr. Caldwell nodded. You are right. Then he turned to the whole room. I owe all of you an apology. I have told myself for years that I was strict because I cared about excellence. But today I see that sometimes I was not strict. I was biased. I gave some children the benefit of the doubt and made others earn it before they even spoke. That is not teaching. That is harm. The room stayed silent. Nobody rushed to forgive him. That was right. Some apologies need room to breathe. Nia looked up at her father. Marcus bent slightly. Your choice, sweetheart, he whispered. Nia faced Mr. Caldwell. Her voice was quiet. You made me feel like telling the truth was wrong. Mr. Caldwell nodded, tears on his face now. I know. You made me feel like my dad could not be who he is because I do not look rich enough. I did. You made everyone stare at me. I did. Nia wiped her cheek. I do not forgive you yet. A few adults inhaled sharply. Marcus did not correct her. He looked proud. Nia continued. But I think you should change. Not just because my dad came. You should change because most kids do not have someone like him walking through the door. That sentence broke something in the room. Mr. Caldwell covered his mouth. Principal Mitchell lowered her head. Marcus closed his eyes for a moment. Because that was the truth behind the truth. Most children do not get a dramatic rescue. Most children carry the wound home quietly. Mr. Caldwell whispered, You are right. Nia said, You should believe kids more, and if you do not believe them, you should ask kindly, not shame them. Mr. Caldwell nodded. I will. I promise I will. Marcus looked at him. A promise is not a performance, Mr. Caldwell. It is a debt paid over time. Yes, sir. Principal Mitchell stepped forward. This school will be taking immediate action. Mr. Caldwell will be removed from classroom duties pending review. We will begin mandatory training on racial bias, class bias, and disciplinary fairness for every staff member. We will also create a policy requiring verification before any student is accused of dishonesty about family information. Mr. Caldwell looked at her. I accept that. Marcus nodded once. Good. Then he looked back at the class. Now I believe my daughter invited me for career day. A small laugh moved through the room, not loud, not careless, but human. Marcus turned to Nia. May I still speak? Nia sniffed and nodded yes. He smiled softly. Then I will. For the next half hour, Justice Marcus Bennett spoke to room 214, but not like a man showing off. He did not list famous cases. He did not try to make children feel small beneath the weight of his title. He told them about being a boy in Atlanta who loved libraries because books did not care how much money his family had. He told them about his mother, a public school secretary who corrected his grammar with a red pen and made him rewrite thank you notes until they sounded sincere. He told them about his father, a postal worker, who walked miles every day and still came home with enough strength to ask his son what he had learned. He told them about law school in New York City, where some classmates assumed he was there because of a program, not because he had earned his seat. He told them about his first courtroom in Chicago, where he represented a family that nearly lost their home because nobody had explained a legal document in plain language. He told them justice was not a marble building. Justice was what happened when power finally listened. The students asked questions. Henry asked if he wore a robe every day. Marcus smiled and said, "Only at work, and it is less comfortable than people imagine." Maya asked if judges ever made mistakes. Marcus looked at Mr. Caldwell before answering. "Yes, every human being makes mistakes. The question is whether they love their pride more than the truth." Emma asked if being important made life easier. Marcus thought for a moment. Sometimes it opens doors, sometimes it paints a target, but importance is not the same as peace. Character matters more. Nia asked no questions. She just sat near the front, holding the new copy of her essay that Principal Mitchell had printed from the file her mother had saved the night before. At the end, Marcus asked if he could read it aloud. Nia hesitated. Then she nodded. He held the paper carefully. "My father is Justice Marcus Bennett. He serves on the United States Supreme Court. He helps decide important cases about the Constitution, civil rights, freedom, fairness, and justice. He says the law should never forget the people it affects." Marcus paused. His voice thickened, but he kept reading. "I admire my father because he listens before he decides. He says being smart is not enough if you are not kind. He says a powerful person who does not listen can become dangerous. I want to be like him because he uses his voice for people who might not be heard." By the time he finished, several adults were crying. Mr. Caldwell was looking at the floor. Marcus folded the paper and handed it back to Nia as if returning something sacred. "This is excellent work," he said. Nia smiled, not fully, but enough. That afternoon, Lincoln Academy did not return to normal. Some days changed the shape of a place. By evening, parents were calling. Some angry, some shaken, some asking how a teacher had been allowed to treat children that way for years under the nicer name of high standards. Principal Mitchell called an emergency faculty meeting. Mr. Caldwell sat at the end of the table with his hands folded. Usually he spoke first. That day he did not speak until asked. When he did, his voice was hoarse. "I have spent years believing I could identify dishonesty, attitude, entitlement, and exaggeration in students. Today I realize that much of what I called instinct, prejudice, wearing professional clothing." No one interrupted, he continued. "I saw Nia Bennett, and I decided her truth was impossible because it did not match my assumptions. I saw Maya Brooks defend her friend, and I called it disruption. I saw Mrs. Brooks in uniform, and I made a cruel remark because I wanted control. That is not a mistake I can explain away. That is a failure of character." A younger teacher named Emily Foster wiped her eyes. Another teacher, Mark Reynolds, looked down at the table, uncomfortable. Mr. Caldwell continued. "I do not deserve quick forgiveness. I do not expect it. But I am asking for accountability, training, and the chance to become someone who does not harm children the way I harmed Nia today." Principal Mitchell looked at him for a long time. "You will have accountability," she said. "Whether growth follows will depend on you. The story might have ended there in a simpler world. A teacher makes a mistake. A powerful father arrives. An apology happens. Everyone learns. But real change is slower, and real harm travels farther than the room where it begins." That night, Nia sat on the couch between her parents while rain tapped against the windows of their Washington, D.C. home. Grace had come home early from the hospital after Marcus called her. She had listened quietly while Nia told the story in pieces. The tearing paper, the laughter, the office, the forced apology. The moment she thought nobody was coming. Grace held her daughter's hand so tightly that Marcus noticed the tension in her jaw. Mothers have their own courtrooms inside them, and in Grace Bennett's heart, Mr. Caldwell had already been found guilty. But she did not speak in anger first. She brushed Nia's hair back and asked what hurt the most. Nia leaned against her. When he said my dad was not coming, Marcus looked down. That sentence had followed him all day. Your father is not coming. It sounded like more than one teacher's cruelty. It sounded like the old lie the world told many black children. No one is coming. No one will defend you. No one will believe you unless power walks in wearing your last name. Marcus leaned forward, elbows on his knees. Nia, I need to tell you something. She looked at him. I am proud of you, not because you are my daughter, not because you defended my job title. I am proud because you stood in the truth when standing was hard. Nia whispered, I was scared. Courage is not the absence of fear. I know, you always say that. And I will keep saying it until you roll your eyes in college. For the first time all day, Nia laughed a little. Grace kissed her temple. Then Nia asked, why did he think I was lying? The question made the room heavier. Grace and Marcus looked at each other. There were easy answers. Because he was mean, because he was arrogant, because he did not know. But Nia deserved better than easy. Marcus spoke carefully. Some people carry pictures in their minds of who belongs where. They may not admit it. They may not even understand it. But when someone does not match that picture, they doubt them. Because I am black. Partly because we don't live in a mansion. Partly because my shoes were old. Maybe. Nia looked down. Marcus touched her chin gently and lifted her face. But none of that is about your worth. That is about the limits of his imagination, Grace said, and his responsibility is to make his imagination bigger, not to make your truth smaller. Nia thought about that. Then she said, I do not want other kids to feel like that. Marcus nodded. Then we will help make sure they do not. In the weeks that followed, Lincoln Academy changed in ways people could see and ways people could only feel. Mr. Caldwell did not return to teaching immediately. Some parents demanded that he be fired. Others argued that one mistake should not ruin a career. Denise Brooks stood at the school board meeting and said something that silenced both sides. This was not one mistake. It was a pattern that finally got caught because the child's father had a title too big to ignore. The question is not just what happens to Mr. Caldwell. The question is what happens to every child whose parent cannot arrive in a black car and make adults ashamed. The room erupted in applause. Mr. Caldwell sat in the back and took it. He did not defend himself. That mattered. Not enough to erase what he did, but enough to show that the apology had not ended at the classroom door. Principal Mitchell announced a series of reforms. Teachers would receive training on implicit bias and class assumptions. Disciplinary referrals would be reviewed for patterns. Students accused of dishonesty about family circumstances would be treated with care, not public humiliation. Parents from all kinds of work would be invited to speak with equal honor. The school would create a listening council where students could report moments when they felt dismissed, stereotyped, or unheard. Nia did not want to join at first. She was tired of being the story. But Maya convinced her. You do not have to be the story, Maya said. You can be the reason the next story ends sooner. So Nia joined. The first meeting was held in the library. There were 8 students: Maya Brooks, Emma Whitaker, Henry Collins, Sophia Ramirez, Caleb Turner, Olivia Reed, Nia Bennett, and a quiet boy named Jordan Price, who had been accused of cheating because he finished a reading test faster than expected. They sat in a circle while Ms. Foster, the younger teacher, listened. At first, nobody knew what to say. Then Sophia spoke. Last year, Mr. Caldwell said my mom's cleaning job was nice, then changed the subject. But when Emma talked about her dad's company, he asked 5 questions. Emma looked ashamed. Sophia quickly asked, It was not your fault. Emma nodded. I know. But I noticed too. I just did not say anything. Maya looked at her. Why not? Emma swallowed. Because it was easier not to. That honesty sat between them. Then, Jordan spoke. When I said my uncle is a software engineer in New York, Mr. Caldwell asked if I was sure he was not just fixing computers. I laughed because everyone laughed, but I hated it. Caleb said, Teachers always ask me if I am angry when I am just quiet. Olivia said, When I use big words, people say I am adorable. When Nia uses them, they say she has attitude. Nia looked at her. Olivia blushed. I'm sorry. Nia nodded. Not forgiveness exactly, but recognition. The listening council grew. Students began telling the truth about small wounds adults had missed. A lunch aide who always searched certain backpacks. A substitute who mispronounced names but never apologized. A teacher who praised boys for leadership and girls for being helpful. A counselor who assumed a student's parents could not afford a program before asking. None of it was as dramatic as a torn essay, but all of it mattered. Because harm does not need to be dramatic to be real. Mr. Caldwell was required to attend training outside the school. He went to sessions in Washington, D.C., Baltimore, and Philadelphia. He listened to educators, parents, psychologists, and former students speak about bias in classrooms. At first, he took notes like a man preparing to pass a test. Then something changed. During one session in Baltimore, a black man named Samuel Carter stood at the front of the room and told a story from his childhood. My teacher accused me of stealing my own calculator because she did not think my mother could afford it. I still remember the way everyone looked at me. I am 46 years old, and I still remember. Mr. Caldwell lowered his pen. For the first time, he understood that Nia might remember his face when she was 46. That night, he sat alone in his apartment in Washington, D.C., and opened a notebook. He wrote, I thought I was protecting truth. I was protecting my assumptions. I thought I was teaching humility. I was demanding smallness. I thought I knew children. I only knew the version of them my bias allowed me to see. He cried then. Not because he had been exposed. Because he finally saw the child standing in front of him with shaking hands and a truthful essay. Months passed. Winter bent into spring. Nia's story spread beyond the school, though the Bennetts refused television interviews. Marcus did not want his daughter's pain turned into entertainment. But the school board report became public and people talked. Some called it a story about racism. It was. Some called it a story about classism. It was. Some called it a story about a teacher who learned too late. It was, but Marcus told Nia it was also a story about listening. At the spring assembly, Lincoln Academy invited families to speak again. This time the event was called Every Story Matters. There was no ranking of careers, no polished hierarchy, no subtle ladder where lawyers stood above bus drivers and surgeons stood above cleaners. Denise Brooks spoke first. She wore her transit uniform proudly. She told the students about the city before sunrise, about regular passengers, about elderly riders who needed patience, about the responsibility of carrying people safely through traffic, weather, anger, exhaustion, and hurry. When she finished, the applause was loud and long. Sophia's mother, Maria Ramirez, spoke next. She worked cleaning offices near Capitol Hill. She told the students how she had learned the names of senators, staffers, guards, and maintenance workers. She said every building has two histories, the one written on plaques, and the one carried by people who keep the lights on. Mr. Caldwell sat in the audience. He applauded with everyone else. Not performatively, not to be seen, because he meant it. Then Dr. Grace Bennett spoke about trauma surgery. She told the children that every body on an operating table deserves the same urgency. Whether the patient is a judge, a janitor, a tourist, or someone with no name in the hospital system yet. Finally, Marcus Bennett stood. He did not speak about the Supreme Court that day. He spoke about his father, the postal worker. He spoke about his mother, the school secretary. He spoke about how dignity had raised him long before any court confirmed him. Then he invited Nya to the stage. She did not know he would do that. Her eyes widened. But Maya squeezed her hand and whispered, "Go!" Nya walked up slowly. The room applauded before she said a word. She stood at the microphone, small but steady. "My dad always says justice begins with listening," she said. She glanced at Mr. Caldwell. He looked back with tears in his eyes. Nya continued, "I used to think being believed meant someone important had to prove you were telling the truth. But now I think being believed should start before proof, especially for children. Because if adults only listen after they are embarrassed, then kids get hurt first." The room went silent. "I learned that telling the truth can be scary. I learned that some people will doubt you because your life is bigger than what they expect. But I also learned that people can change if they are brave enough to admit they were wrong." Mr. Caldwell lowered his head. Nya took a breath. "So my lesson is this: do not make someone shrink just because your mind is too small for their story." For a moment, no one moved. Then the room stood. Applause filled the auditorium. Maya cheered the loudest. Denise wiped her eyes. Grace held Marcus's hand, and Mr. Caldwell stood too, crying openly now, not as the hero of the story, not as a man seeking sympathy, but as someone who understood that he had become the warning, and was trying day by day to become something better. After the assembly, he approached Nya and her parents. He stopped at a respectful distance. "Justice Bennett, Dr. Bennett." Marcus nodded. Mr. Caldwell held a folder in his hands. "I wanted to give you this." He offered it to Nya. She looked at her father. Marcus said, "Only if you want to." Nya took the folder. Inside was her original essay, not the torn one. A new copy, printed on thick paper, placed inside a simple frame. Below it was a handwritten note. "Nya, I did not believe your truth when I should have protected it. I cannot undo that moment, but I can remember it honestly and let it change how I teach, how I listen, and how I see every child who enters my classroom. Thank you for telling the truth, even when I made it painful." Nya read it twice. Then she looked at him. "Are you really different now?" Mr. Caldwell did not rush. "I am becoming different. I think I will have to keep becoming different for the rest of my life." Nya studied him. That answer felt true. She nodded once. Good. It was not forgiveness wrapped in music. It was not a perfect ending. But it was real. And sometimes real is better than perfect. By the end of the school year, room 214 had changed completely. The old future leaders wall was gone. In its place was a new display. Every story matters. Under it were essays from students about their families. Maya wrote about her mother driving buses through Washington, D.C. before the sun rose. Sophia wrote about her mother cleaning offices where laws were written. Emma wrote about how her father had power but was learning to listen more. Jordan wrote about his uncle in New York, who built software and taught him coding over video calls. Caleb wrote about his grandmother in Chicago, who raised 5 children and still remembered everyone's favorite meal. And Nya wrote a new essay. This time, she did not begin with the Supreme Court. She began with breakfast. "My father burns toast on Saturdays. He calls me little judge when I ask too many questions. He works in a building where people argue about the Constitution. But at home he listens to me talk about school, like it is the most important case in the country." I used to think his title was the most important thing about him. Now I think the most important thing is that he listens before he decides. Mr. Caldwell read that essay privately after school. He sat at his desk for a long time. Then he placed it on the wall with the others, not at the top, not in the center, just among the stories, where it belonged. Years later, people would still talk about the day Justice Marcus Bennett walked into Lincoln Academy. Some would tell it dramatically. They would remember the black cars, the silent classroom, the teacher's pale face, the powerful father arriving just in time. But Nya remembered smaller things. The sound of paper tearing, Maya standing up for her, her father's arms around her, her mother's voice at home saying, "His limits are not your worth." Mr. Caldwell saying, I am becoming different, and the lesson she carried with her was not that power can silence cruelty. Power can do that sometimes, but not always. The deeper lesson was that truth needs witnesses, children need listeners, and adults need humility before authority becomes harm. Marcus Bennett understood that better than anyone. He had spent his life studying justice, but that morning reminded him that justice is not only written in opinions from high courts. Sometimes justice is a father kneeling beside his daughter in a classroom. Sometimes it is a bus driver standing up from the back row. Sometimes it is a child saying, "I will not apologize for telling the truth." And sometimes, if grace does its hardest work, justice is also a guilty man, finally seeing the child he wounded and choosing to change instead of hide. That is the kind of ending people remember. Not because everyone was perfect, but because someone told the truth. Someone listened, someone repented, and a room that once made a child feel small became the first place she learned how powerful her voice could be.